Hey guys, and welcome to another week of my video blog. So we're in the middle of a 3-week series on the topic of termination, and last week we talked about how you evaluate whether or not somebody should remain on your staff or not. And once you've made that determination that they shouldn't be on your staff, this week we're going to talk about how you actually conduct that termination conversation. And as with most of the weeks of the video blogs, I have 3 things that I keep in mind when it comes to this. The first one is that conversation should happen in person. The second thing is that the conversation, if at all possible, should have a third person in the room. And the third thing is that conversation should be as direct and as concise as possible. No room for dialogue. So let's unpack those 3 things. The first one probably sounds like a no-brainer, but that conversation needs to happen in person. I've heard some horror stories, I'm sure you have, of people being terminated with a note or with an email or a phone call or even text. I've heard that as well, and those are big time no-nos. The termination conversation is probably the most sensitive thing or sensitive conversation that could happen between an employee and an employer. And if you remember a few weeks ago, we talked about navigating sensitive conversations, and this is one of the most sensitive you'll ever have. Do it in person. Avoid email. Avoid even the phone. Do it in person. It's the least you can do out of respect to your employee, or I should say former employee. The second thing, if at all possible, to have a third person in the room. A person who could be a witness to the dialogue that's happening. In case that conversation gets really heated, it's a third person who can take your side and help to make sure that conversation is effective and calm. And as I think back to my years as a manager, I've been a part of 8 terminations. All of them except the one I just got done with 2 weeks ago had a third-party person in the room, and it was very helpful. And then the third and last thing is that conversation needs to be as direct and concise as possible. It is not a meeting where you dialogue about a person's performance, that this was their fault or this was your fault. At that point in time, none of that is going to be productive or effective, and you've done the hard work already of evaluating whether or not that person should be on your staff, and you've decided they haven't, so it's time to stick to that decision. I don't know about you guys, but in every single termination I've been a part of, the other person has typically come up with a laundry list of reasons why they should stay on staff, and for me, as a highly relational person, it makes me start to second guess my decision. But like I said before, I did the due diligence of getting to that decision, so that meeting has to be as productive as possible. In the termination that I conducted 2 weeks ago, I found myself second guessing the decision because the person kept coming up with reason after reason of why it was the wrong decision and why they should stay on staff. But I knew this was not going to be a meeting about debate. This was going to be a direct, concise interaction, and the decision was made, and that was final, and that was really helpful to keep in mind. So these are the 3 things that I think about when it comes to terminating an employee, that actual conversation. Again, this is a very difficult conversation, so I'd love to hear your feedback and your experiences when it comes to this sort of a thing. Feel free to email, or you can comment on this video, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks.